Hi, I'm Geoff Starr, and Jonathan Montez asked me to do some group games with you guys. And before we get started with the group games, I want to tell you about why I love group games and why I choose to do them. Now, you can do them too much, so I don't do them every time I get together with youth, but I love to do these group games. And some of them require no props, some of them will require some props, and some of them are easy to set up, and some of them take a little time. So I'd like to go through some of those with you, but first I want to tell you why I like them, why I think that they're valuable, and why we should be using them. And to me, it's all about how you set it up. If I set it up and I'm like, well, guys, whatever you want to do, ho-hum about it, they're not going to like it. But if I get engaged with it, if I'm excited about it, I think the youth will be as well. One of the things I love to see is when we do group games is some of the kids smiling. Sometimes I'll have Sabbath school or have meetings with the kids and I'll never see some of these kids smile. But when we do group games, they'll smile or they'll laugh or they'll get engaged. Now, granted, you're not going to get 100% engagement. You're not going to get every kid every time involved in every single game you do. But I think different games involve different kids. And I see that one kid will love this one game, another kid will love another game. So I love to change it up and do different games with them. I also love to, when they think they know what's going to happen, to change it a little bit. So continue to be creative. Don't just take what I give you here and say, well, this is what we have to do. Look at it, and maybe you'll have to change. So for your context and for what you're working with and who you're working with, change some of these things. Or maybe they'll give you an idea for a new game. I'd love to hear about that you guys can play with your youth. But again, smiling is the number one thing. Involvement is another thing. And also getting to know people. And we're not going to go too much into icebreakers. We will have one that's more of an icebreaker. But hopefully you guys know some icebreakers. If not, there's plenty of resources online to get those. But icebreakers are a way to get to know people. But also, as you go deeper in some of these games, it's a way to get to know yourself. Maybe you didn't know that you could lead in a certain way, or maybe one of your youth didn't know that they would enjoy a certain thing like this and get involved, and they can know more about themselves. So number one, know more about others. Number two, know more about themselves, and they get to smile. And I love it when we get to see our youth smile. So I need some help. I have some things that we're gonna put right here in front of me. Here we go. There's so many things here, and we're gonna let you guys look at some of them. I have some helpers in a minute. We're gonna demonstrate them, but I'm just gonna go through them real quick. We have tennis balls and some things you can throw around. Now, obviously, be safe with that, but I'm gonna go over some ways that we can use that and really get people to smile and get engaged. These things, I've got PVC pipe that's, I believe, an inch, maybe an inch and a half. You guys can do whatever you want with whatever size marble you have. Basically, and we'll go over the game, basically you're gonna have the marble rolling. That's it. I cut these into 1.5 or 2 foot sections and then cut them in half with a saw. If you're interested in building something like this, make sure you use I used a metal cutting saw, and it kept it from splitting and cracking. So a metal cutting saw on my table saw, and was able to cut this. So if you don't have that, that's okay. You can buy some like this, and we'll have some links for you. So we'll show that game a little bit. The kids love that game. So I have about 20 of these. Depending on how many youth you have, you'll want to have more or less. It's really, we've had a group of 40, and each kid, 2 people would use one of these. So I'd have one kid on one side and one kid on the other side. So you can use any of that. This is a carpet square. Literally, the church was going to throw it away, and I said, let me cut some first from it. So I just measured and kind of just eyeballed it and used a razor blade and cut out 1 foot by 1 foot squares. I did not steal this from the conference. From the church, they said we could use it. So I have about 20 of these, again, depending on the size of your youth or group. You guys decide how many you want. And there's several games we play with this, and I'll show you a few of those here today. We have these. Now you can cut these out with a bandsaw. I did not. I bought these. They are just solid wooden blocks, and they're similar. See, these two are similar, and we'll explain why later. These two are kind of similar, and actually there's a third one. That's a little mustache. These are similar objects, and we use blindfolds with that, and we'll explain that later. This is a piece of webbing. I have it tied up a certain way, but we'll show you untied. It's not, you don't have to tie it this way. It's a piece of webbing. They use it for climbing, but we also use it for several different things. They actually call them, there's a whole book called Raccoon Circles, and we'll hopefully get a link to you. Raccoon Circles, and you can do hundreds of games with just a piece of webbing. That's all you need, and I love using this. These are Legos. A lot of you guys have these. I bought super cheap. I think we have like 2,000 or 4,000 Legos that we use for different group games, for large to small. And we'll explain some of this. You can use blindfolds. You can vary the games. Kids love it. Kids are used to playing with it. And the final thing we have, this is just something, and we'll put a link to this as well. The first thing, there's just a bunch of pictures. It's just a bunch of pictures. So you can even make this yourself. You can there's a road sign, there's an old car, there's waterfalls, there's somebody with a crazy outfit, crazy disguise, and we'll go over a couple games you can play with those. A typewriter, just simple things that you guys can grab and do, and we'll go over each of these games in different videos, so if you want to jump ahead to the webbing one, you don't have to watch through all the other ones. And we're going to try to do a video where if you don't have anything, if you're just there sitting by the side of the road waiting for your bus to be fixed, you maybe not by the road, maybe in the bus, but if you're sitting, I remember being on a mission trip, we had to wait for something, and we had nothing, none of this stuff I had with me, but we came up with some games that are team building, and I've been able to participate in some, and the kids love them. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let us know some new games that we could learn from you guys. One of the things I wanted to mention before we go through all the games is that one of the most important things of these group games is the debrief time. The debrief time gives you a chance, and a lot of times it depends on the size of your group. I will grab and sit in a circle and sit down with them. As a leader, don't sit in a chair above them. If you need a chair, make everybody sit in a chair. Don't walk around like you're teaching a class, but sit down with them and be a part of this. And ask questions like, what did you learn? What did you learn about teamwork? And we'll go through some more questions as we go through each game, because some questions are specific for each game. Some questions are general. What did you feel heard? Did you feel accepted? Did you feel like your opinion was valid or was listened to? At the end, I want to apply whatever we talked about. How do I apply this to, if you're dealing with a lot of freshmen, how do you apply this to your first year? Or if you're dealing with seniors, how are you going to apply this to college? How are you going to apply this to dating relationships? How are you going to apply this to your friends? How are you going to apply this to hard times when it comes in the classroom or at work or whatever other challenges you face? The application is so important. I was reading a book about some of these group games, and they said, we don't learn from experiences, we learn from reflecting on experiences. So I think it's very important that we reflect on what we just did rather than just do the game we've done. There are some games that I just do and walk away, but there's other games that we need to reflect on, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, thanks for joining us for this one. We're going to talk a lot about tennis balls for two games. We have 3 different games we're going to go over and a couple different variations of that. So the first one is not about a tennis ball, it's about this. And this has a lot of questions. I don't know if you can see them on the camera there, but worst job ever. And my son just said mowing lawns. I might agree with him when I was a teenager. Board game I would like to pick or like to play. There's another question. So you would toss this to somebody and say, answer the question, and you could tell them wherever your left thumb or right thumb lands. People I admire, like I might say Abraham Lincoln, and then I would toss it to somebody. Now, of course, you're encouraging your kids not to whip it as hard as they can. And you could encourage them by building them up and say, I know that some kids would throw this as hard as they can, but you guys won't. And that seems to work pretty well. So that's just an easy icebreaker game when you're dealing with maybe kids you're getting to know or they're getting to know each other. So I want to move on to our tennis ball game, which is also another icebreaker, and I'll show you how to use that. So I've got a couple of assistants that are here with me today. Thanks, Jonathan and Ben, for joining me. So tennis ball, it's simple. Get in a circle. Let's say you have 15, 20 people. I've done this with as many as 40 people. So you could do this with a large group. You could even have different circles if you have even more than that. Probably 15, maybe even 10 people I've done this with. So I'll take the ball and I'll start as a facilitator. I'll say, I'm going to toss this underhand. I'll describe how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to throw it over. I'm not going to bounce it. I'm going to toss it to someone and say their name. Now, if I don't know their name, I'll be like, what's your name?
Jonathan.
And oh, this is Jonathan. So I'll say, here, Jonathan. He'll catch it. And if he forgets my name, he'll say, what's your name? And I'll say, I'm Geoff. And he'll say,
thank you, Geoff.
And then he'll take the ball and throw it, and I'll cross my arms. And he'll take the ball and throw it to another person that doesn't have it. For our illustration, it's just one other person, but imagine more people. So
here, Ben.
Thanks, Jonathan.
And then when it goes around the whole circle, so he would cross his arms, signifying that he has had the tennis ball previously. And so you know who has and who doesn't have. And when everybody has it, the last person, which in this case is Benjamin, he would throw me the ball and say, here, Dad, or here,
Geoff.
here, Geoff. And I would say, thanks, Ben. And it would be done. Now, a lot of times we would maybe stop there, depending on time, but almost every time I've done this, somebody's dropped it. So they've hit the ground, and I'll ask the question, do you think our group can do it without dropping it? And some people will say no, and some people will say yes. And this is a great opportunity, depending on who you're dealing with. So I've let them define, like, okay, Jonathan, you said you think we can do it. What do you think we should do? I'll let them come up with some, hey, we should step closer. Some kids will say we should step farther away. Let them come up with some ideas, and maybe it doesn't work. Some people even said we should throw overhand because we're more accurate, and let them try it if you think they'd like to. So different ideas, different ways that they can experiment with this, and however long you want to take. But then once they get this, they're usually pretty happy as a group. So you just let them succeed. I would introduce another tennis ball. So I would say, here, Jonathan.
Thank you, Geoff.
And every time we do this, we're saying each other's names. It just helps us learn people's names. And he would continue to throw it.
Here, Ben.
I would start another tennis ball before I get this one. I'd say, here, Jonathan.
Thanks, Geoff.
Here.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben.
Here, Ben.
And so you can see this gets, here. Thank you, Ben. This gets crazy. Everybody's name's calling. The balls are going to fly back and forth, and the kids start laughing. And this is what we talked about earlier about them smiling. I love to see this. And then you might have, let's say you have a group of 10 that they say this is too easy. I might introduce another ball. So I have 3. And they do this again. We go again. And then without telling them, usually I won't tell them. You could if you wanted to. I have one that is a little different. Let me step up here and grab a different one. I have maybe an orange one, or maybe I've colored it with black Sharpie. I will throw it backwards. So I'll take it and say, here, Ben, I'll try to get his attention without Jonathan or other people. He's concentrating on where the ball is coming from. And I'll throw it to Ben. And we dropped it. That's okay. Here, Ben, and he will throw. It will go backwards. One thing you have to worry about?
Thanks, Ben.
Throw it back real quick.
Here, Ben.
Here.
Thanks, Geoff.
When they both have a ball and they're both going to come this way, it's hilarious to watch because people are like, "Wait, you got a ball and you get it, and you're used to throwing it to Ben, so sometimes you throw it right back to Ben." So it's hilarious to see, just like this. It's hilarious to see what they'll do, and then you talk about eye contact, you talk about communication, you can talk about anything. We talked about debrief earlier. In the debrief for this game, I will bring up challenges when you're trying to juggle too many things. When you have homework, when you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you have troubles at home, whatever they are, you have maybe too many things to juggle. And you're on every sports team, and you're on all the choirs and band trips, you can look at what you're juggling and how much communication is valuable, how much eye contact, how much names. I mean, when people get to know names, it's valuable. So all those things you can hit with this, and that is the tennis ball. But before we go off there, we're going to cut here and show you one more game with tennis balls. All right, so here we have a tarp. I think this is about 8x6 tarp, super cheap. We have about 6 of these, and I've cut some holes in them. No, as my son tried, it's not to put your head through, but what we do is I have the kids hold these, and we first start by placing a tennis ball in the middle. And we're not going to be able to demonstrate. We'll try it. And you try to get the tennis ball around each hole without falling in. And it seems easy. The kids are like, oh, that's going to be easy. And they start trying it. It falls off the edge. It falls off in the hole, and you keep trying it, so you have to lift it, and we're going to try to, and then you got to go let's go down to that one, and there it goes through the hole. So you grab that tennis ball, and you try again, and you try again, and then once they get around all 4, usually you have about 6 people around the tarp. Usually you'll have some cheering, especially if there's other people trying it over there, and this is the first group to do it. They're going to be ecstatic that they got it done. They're going to be jumping up and down, and then you introduce them. You say, okay, here's what I want you to do now. I want you to place it in the center, and we're not going to be able to do this here either. I want you to throw it up in the air, and I want you to catch it. And the first, I'm like, that's easy. First time they throw it in the air, the ball goes this way or that way or another way. So they keep, or it does that. They keep trying until they get it to throw up and come back down. And then they think they've accomplished that. You can increase the level again if you say, okay, do you want the next challenge? They have to, and I've had kids do this, they have to throw it up in the air, flip the tarp, and catch it. So you got to throw it quite a bit higher and a little more accurate, and think about how you're flipping it. So how we use this one. You guys can put this down. Thank you. So how I apply this one, what I do, I talk to them, especially this one I like to use for freshmen who are coming into the academy setting or high school setting, and say, what are some things that you don't know about the school? And they might mention, like, I don't know any friends, or I don't know the schedule, I don't know what I'm going to do, how long homework's going to take, whatever they are, and how are you going to navigate that? And how are you going to go through your first year and be successful? And sometimes that's having other people help you. Like, this tennis ball is not going to get around all those holes by itself. So allowing other people to guide you, like your teachers, your parents, other classmates that are trustworthy and honest, and you can allow them to guide you. And then I'll use things like what teamwork can accomplish. When you first tried to flip over the tarp and have it land on the tarp, you couldn't do it. It took several tries. So things that are rewarding are going to come with effort and with trying again. And you may not make it the first time on the basketball team, but you may need to try again and continue to practice and work hard at it. So that's how I apply those, and continue to ask those questions that we talked about, like, did you feel heard? Did you have an idea that didn't get talked about? Did you feel like you communicated well? Who was the leader in your group? They'll point at the leader. Was that okay with everybody? And you can talk about some of the things and the emotions that they felt through that, and then apply it to their life. Just real quick, with tennis balls, all the games we just played, not all of them, but the games where you throw things, we can use anything. You can use, I have some random objects that came actually as a set, and it actually throws people off a little bit, because you'll throw a tennis ball and then you'll throw them a little Teletubby or bear, and then you might throw a little, I don't know what this is called, but a strange ball, and then you have a square thing that you might throw at them. These also can be used. One of the things I really like doing is using little stuffed animals for reflection devices. So I have done a group game like this, and then I borrowed some teddy bears and some little stuffed animals from my kids and set them out and said, grab one that reminds you about this game, or grab one that you like. And then I make them think about how that reminds them about the game, and it just makes them think in a different way. So anything you can use to make them think and to make them apply is going to be beneficial.